Okay, let's start. Number 1. Samjaza. You're standing on the summit of Mount Hermon, on the border between what is now Syria and Lebanon. The elevation is over 9,000 feet. Snow covers the peak most of the year. And according to a text that predates the New Testament by at least 2 centuries, this is the place where 200 angels descended from the sky and swore a pact that would corrupt the entire human race. The text is called the Book of Enoch. It was written in Aramaic, probably between 300 and 200 BCE. For centuries, early Christians treated it as scripture. The Epistle of Jude, which is in your Bible right now, quotes it directly. Jude chapter 1 verse 14 attributes a prophecy to Enoch, the 7th from Adam, and the words Jude puts in Enoch's mouth come, line for line, from 1 Enoch chapter 1, verse 9. Jude chapter 1 verse 6 references the same fallen angels, kept in eternal chains under darkness, bound for judgment on that great day. That language is Enochic. It doesn't come from Genesis. It comes from a book that was later removed from the Bible. The Council of Laodicea, around 363 to 364 CE, excluded it. Athanasius rejected it. Jerome dismissed it. Augustine called it interesting but not divinely authored. By the 5th century, the Book of Enoch had vanished from Western Christianity. The only complete copy survived in Ge'ez, the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which never removed it from their canon. They still read it as scripture today. A Scottish explorer named James Bruce brought 3 Ge'ez manuscripts back to Europe in 1773, and Richard Lawrence published the first English translation in 1821. The standard scholarly translation, by R.H. Charles, through Oxford, came out in 1913 and is still in print. Then came the Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1952, archaeologists pulled Aramaic fragments from Qumran Cave 4 in the Judean desert. 11 separate manuscripts, catalogued as 4Q201 through 4Q212, covering roughly a fifth of the Ethiopic text. Joseph Meilich published the full analysis through Oxford's Clarendon Press in 1976. The fragments confirmed that the Book of Enoch circulated widely in Second Temple Judaism, centuries before the Church decided to cut it. Here is what the text says about Mount Hermon. 1 Enoch chapter 6 names 20 leaders among the 200 angels. Samjaza is listed first. He is the one who proposed the descent. But the text adds a detail that matters. Samjaza was afraid. He told the others, "I fear that you will not agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin." The rest of them answered by swearing the oath together on the summit, binding themselves so that no one could back out and leave the others exposed. The text says they bound themselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan but to do this thing. Every one of them committed. The word Hermon itself carries the crime. The name comes from the Semitic root HRM, which means oath or ban. The mountain is literally named after the pact they swore on it. Genesis 6, verses 1 through 4, tells a compressed version of the same event. The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all, which they chose. The Book of Enoch is the expansion. Where Genesis gives you 4 verses, the Book of Enoch gives you chapters. Samjaza's own teaching, listed in 1 Enoch chapter 8 verse 3, was enchantments and root cuttings. In Aramaic, the terms refer to binding spells, verbal incantations, and the ritual harvesting of plant roots under specific astronomical conditions. Early Christian readers translated this as witchcraft. Modern scholars read it as a combination of herbalism and sorcery, the kind of botanical knowledge that sits at the border between medicine and magic, and the text treats that border as a line humans were never supposed to cross. His punishment is in chapter 10. God sends the archangel Michael with specific instructions. Bind Samjaza and his associates, cast them into the valleys of the earth, hold them there for 70 generations, until the day of judgment, and then send them into the fire. 70 generations. The text doesn't say forever, it gives a number. And the number implies a clock that, depending on how you count a generation, may or may not have already run out. But the version you've heard, the one that treats this as a simple story about angels falling from grace, that's not the full picture. Because Samjaza didn't descend alone, and his subordinates didn't all teach the same thing. Each one carried a different category of knowledge, assigned to a different group of humans, and the text names every one of them. The second angel on the list is the one the text calls the Star of God. Number 2. Kokabil. You're lying on your back in a field somewhere in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, maybe 3,000 years before anyone will build the Parthenon, and someone beside you is pointing at the sky. Not guessing at what's up there, naming it. Tracing lines between stars with a precision that implies they've seen the full map before, all of it, because they have. They didn't discover these patterns through centuries of patient observation the way mainstream astronomy assumes. According to the Book of Enoch, they were shown them. In a single transfer, by a being whose name literally translates as Star of God. The Book of Enoch, chapter 6, verse 7, lists Kokabil as the fourth of the 20 Watcher leaders who descended on Mount Hermon. His name in the original text breaks down to Kokab, the Hebrew word for star, and El, meaning God. The name is a job description, his role spelled out in Aramaic. And according to 1 Enoch chapter 8 verse 3, his specific assignment among the Watchers was to teach the constellations, not a few of them, not the bright ones anyone could spot. The constellations, the full architecture of the night sky. Think about what that actually implies. In the ancient Near East, the constellations weren't decorative. They weren't art projects drawn over random star patterns. The positions and movements of celestial bodies governed planting seasons, religious calendars, the timing of royal coronations, and the fates of empires. Babylonian astronomers, inheriting traditions from the Sumerians before them, tracked planetary movements with a systematic precision that modern historians still struggle to explain given the optical tools available at the time. The Muel, Apin tablets, dating to around 1000 BCE, but recording observations likely centuries older, catalog the rising and setting times of dozens of stars and constellations, organized into 3 parallel bands across the sky. They divide the year into 12 months using stellar markers. They predict the visibility windows of planets. This goes well beyond casual stargazing. In Mesopotamia, constellation knowledge was state power. The priests who held it advised kings. The scholars who refined it ran the calendar that organized agriculture, taxation, and warfare. Losing access to that knowledge meant losing the ability to plant at the right time, which meant famine. The Book of Enoch says this entire system of knowledge wasn't supposed to be human at all. Kokabil brought it down from heaven and handed it over, and the text treats that transfer as a crime. Here is what makes this reading uncomfortable for historians who study the transmission of astronomical knowledge in the ancient world. The Sumerians, who preceded the Babylonians by more than 1,000 years, recorded star catalogs and planetary positions that included celestial bodies not visible to the naked eye. Their astronomical tablets, thousands of them, recovered from sites across southern Iraq and northern Syria, and now held in collections from the British Museum to the University of Pennsylvania, documented orbital relationships with a detail that European science didn't replicate until Copernicus, Kepler, and their successors worked through the mathematics in the 16th and 17th centuries. The standard explanation is generational accumulation, centuries of patient night sky observation refined and passed down. The Book of Enoch offers a different origin story, and Kokabil is the name it attaches to the transfer. I mean, think about that for a second. Every planetarium on Earth teaches what this angel was imprisoned for sharing. Every star chart, every astronomical atlas, every time you open a sky mapping app on your phone, you're using knowledge that, according to a text the early church treated as scripture and then removed, was never supposed to leave heaven. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which still holds the Book of Enoch as canonical, still reads Kokabil's name in their scripture. The rest of Christianity buried it. The text doesn't leave his fate ambiguous. Like every other watcher on the list, Kokabil was subdued by the archangels, acting on God's direct orders and confined. The tradition holds that he was imprisoned in Sheol, the underworld of Hebrew cosmology, not a place of fire but a holding cell, a dark waiting room for the day of final judgment. He sits there, according to the text, in chains, in the dark, for the crime of teaching mortals to read the sky. But here's the detail that everyone missed at the time. Kokabil mapped the sky. He gave humans the positions, the names, the architecture. But another angel went further. He didn't just show people where the stars were. He taught them how to read what the stars meant, how to pull prediction and fate from the positions Kokabil had charted. And his name, when you translate it, means lightning of God. That angel was Barakiel. Number 3. Barakiel. You're in the court of a Mesopotamian king, somewhere around 1800 BCE. The room is lit by oil lamps. A priest is seated at a low table with a clay tablet in front of him, wet, freshly pressed. He's reading the sky through a narrow window, and what he sees will determine whether the king goes to war this season or waits. The position of Jupiter relative to the constellation of the Lion tells him one thing. The timing of Venus's disappearance below the western horizon tells him another. He synthesizes the data, presses his stylus into the clay, and delivers his verdict. The king listens. Armies move or stay based on what this man reads in the stars. This is astrology, not the horoscope column in a newspaper. Mesopotamian astrology was a political technology, a system for extracting prediction from celestial mechanics, and the states that practiced it treated it as classified intelligence. The priests who performed it held their positions for life. The tablets that recorded their methods were stored in temple archives with restricted access, and according to the Book of Enoch, the entire discipline traces back to a single angel named Barakiel. 1 Enoch chapter 6 verse 7 lists Barakiel among the 20 watcher leaders. Chapter 8 verse 3 identifies his specific teaching as astrology. His name in Aramaic breaks into Barak, meaning lightning, and El, lightning of God. Some scholars connect this to the Babylonian association between atmospheric phenomena and divine will, the idea that lightning was a message from the gods, and that the being who taught humans to read those messages bore the concept in his name. What Barakiel gave humans, according to the text, wasn't just knowledge of the sky. Kokabil had already provided that. Barakiel taught interpretation. He taught the method by which celestial positions become predictions. He turned the map into a language. And the Book of Enoch treats this as a fundamentally different crime from simply knowing where the stars are, because interpretation implies access to divine intent. If astrology works, even partially, even as a system that captures some real pattern in the relationship between celestial mechanics and terrestrial events, then what Barakiel gave humans was a way to read God's plan without God's permission. That's not disobedience, that's espionage. And in the theology of the ancient Near East, divine foreknowledge was the single most guarded property in the cosmos. The gods alone were supposed to know what was coming. Barakiel handed humans the decoder ring. Most people never heard about this part. The modern world treats astrology as entertainment, a pseudoscience at best, something you glance at on your phone and forget. But in the ancient world, astrology was the technology that ran empires. The Enuma Anu Enlil, a series of roughly 70 tablets compiled in Mesopotamia and dating in their earliest forms to the 2nd millennium BCE, constitutes the most extensive collection of celestial omens from the ancient Near East. These tablets record thousands of observations linking planetary positions and atmospheric events to political and military outcomes. The priests who maintained these records held the most sensitive intelligence in the state, and the Book of Enoch says the entire system started with an angel handing it over. Not a gradual human discovery refined across generations. A transfer. One being, one body of knowledge, one act of disobedience, and the text says it was a crime severe enough that the teacher was imprisoned alongside every other watcher, in chains, in darkness, waiting for fire. What survives of Barakiel's teaching is everywhere. Horoscopes are a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Astrology apps have hundreds of millions of downloads. The zodiac is so deeply embedded in human culture that most people can name their sign without thinking about it. According to the Book of Enoch, every one of those systems traces back to a single act of angelic treason committed on a mountaintop before the flood. If you're hearing these names for the first time, you're not alone. These are the chapters they cut from the Bible. Hit subscribe, because the next 7 angels on this list taught things that make star reading look harmless. The detail about Barakiel that unsettles scholars who study Second Temple Judaism is the specificity. The text doesn't say the Watchers generally taught forbidden knowledge. It assigns each angel a lane. Kokabil got the constellations. Barakiel got astrology. And the next angel on the list, the one whose name translates as God is my son, held a position that makes his crime even harder to explain. He was stationed at the gates of paradise itself. He was a guardian, and he taught mortals the secrets he was posted there to protect. Number 4. Shamsiel. You're standing at a gate, not a city gate, not a temple entrance. According to rabbinic tradition, this is the gate to Eden itself, the boundary between the mortal world and the garden that humanity was expelled from in Genesis 3. Someone is stationed here. His job is to guard the entrance, to make sure nothing from inside gets out and nothing unauthorized gets in. His name is Shamsiel, and it translates from Hebrew as God is my son, Shemesh, meaning sun, and El. He is the 16th of the 20 watcher leaders named in 1 Enoch chapter 6, and he is also, in certain Jewish traditions, called the Prince of Paradise. That title shows up in rabbinic literature, not in the Book of Enoch itself, but the convergence is important. If Shamsiel was a guardian, a being stationed at the most sacred boundary in the cosmology, then his descent to Mount Hermon was something worse than disobedience. He abandoned his post. He didn't just join the rebellion. He left the one place he was supposed to be protecting, the one doorway he was supposed to keep sealed, and walked away from it to teach humans what he knew. What he knew, according to 1 Enoch chapter 8, verse 3, was the signs of the sun. That phrase can mean several things, and scholars have debated the translation for more than a century. At its simplest, the signs of the sun refers to solar observation, tracking the sun's position across the sky throughout the year, understanding solstices and equinoxes, predicting eclipses, measuring the length of days and seasons. In the ancient world, this knowledge had enormous practical value. Solar calendars governed agriculture. Knowing when to plant and when to harvest could mean the difference between survival and famine for an entire civilization. Eclipse prediction, in particular, carried political weight. Priests who could predict eclipses held power over kings, because an eclipse that arrived on schedule proved the priest's access to divine knowledge, and one that arrived unannounced could topple a dynasty. Some scholars push the translation further and read signs of the sun as solar divination, the practice of reading the sun's behavior, its color at dawn, the pattern of its corona, the timing of its rise relative to other celestial markers, as omens. This would make Shamsiel's teaching a cousin of Barakiel's astrology, but focused on the single most powerful celestial body. In Babylonian religion, the sun god Shamash was the god of justice and truth, the one who saw everything and judged it. Some researchers have noted that the name Shamsiel carries obvious phonetic overlap with Shamash, and have suggested that the Enochic tradition may have absorbed elements of Babylonian solar mythology into its angel catalog. You'd think someone would have said something. Nobody did. What's striking about Shamsiel's entry in the Watcher list is how little attention it gets compared to Azazel or Samjaza. He's not the leader. He's not the one accused of corrupting all of humanity. He's a specialist, a mid-rank angel in a hierarchy of 20, and his crime was teaching people to understand the thing that rises every morning and sets every night, the sun, the single most visible object in the human environment. And the text treats that understanding as forbidden. The implication is difficult to dismiss. If Kokabil gave humans the map of the night sky, and Barakiel gave them the ability to read fate in the stars, then Shamsiel completed the celestial package by giving them the sun, heaven, the stars, and the sun. The Watchers were handing over the entire sky, one angel at a time, each piece building on the last. And every transfer was punished identically, not because of what was taught, but because the teaching happened at all. Here is what makes Shamsiel's case especially uncomfortable. A being whose title was Prince of Paradise, whose job was guarding the gate to Eden, walked away from that post and brought solar knowledge to mortals who, according to the theology, had already been expelled from the garden he was guarding. He was protecting the boundary, and then he erased it. And the knowledge he carried, how the sun moves, what it signals, when it changes, became the foundation of every agricultural calendar, every eclipse prediction, and every solar cult that followed. But Shamsiel's teaching, all of it, was still knowledge, information, data about the sky. The next angel on this list is different. The next angel didn't give humans information about the natural world. He gave them the tools to reshape it. Weapons, jewelry, industry. And the text says every sin humans ever committed traces back to him. Number 5. Azazel. You're watching a forge. Somewhere in the ancient Near East, in a time the text places before the flood, a fire is burning hot enough to melt metal. Someone is hammering a blade into shape. The steel cools, the edge holds, and for the first time in human history, one person can kill another person efficiently, at a distance, with a weapon specifically designed for that purpose. Before this moment, according to the Book of Enoch, humans didn't have metallurgy, they didn't have swords, they didn't have armor. After this moment, they had all three. And the being who handed them over is the one the text blames for everything that went wrong with the world. Azazel is not like the other angels on this list. The others taught knowledge, Azazel taught industry. 1 Enoch chapter 8, verses 1 and 2, catalogues his teachings in a single dense passage. Azazel taught men to make swords, and knives, and shields, and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets, and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. Read that list again. It covers weaponry, metallurgy, jewelry, cosmetics, and gemstone work. This isn't one category of forbidden knowledge. It's the entire material foundation of civilization. Weapons enabled warfare on a scale that bare hands and wooden clubs couldn't produce. Metallurgy gave humans the ability to reshape raw materials into tools and structures that lasted beyond a single generation. Cosmetics and jewelry introduced vanity, the concept that appearance could be manufactured, that beauty was a technology rather than a natural condition. And the Book of Enoch treats all of these as a single crime committed by a single angel in a single act of transfer. Here is what separates Azazel from every other name on this list. Chapter 10, verses 4 through 8, records his punishment, and the language is specific enough that it reads like a sentencing document. God addresses the archangel Raphael directly. Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness. Make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. Place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. Dudael. The text names the place. Scholars have debated the location, some connecting it to Beth Hadudo, a cliff in the Judean wilderness, mentioned in the Mishnah in connection with the scapegoat ritual, others reading it as a symbolic designation, the cauldron of God. Either way, the specificity matters. God doesn't just sentence Azazel. God specifies the method, the location, the materials, the duration, and the finale. No other angel in the Book of Enoch receives a punishment this detailed. And no, I'm not making that up. Verse 8 delivers the line that makes Azazel singular in the entire Enochic tradition. The whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin, not some sin, not the sin of vanity or the sin of warfare, all of it. Every corruption that followed the Watcher's descent, the text loads onto one angel, and that angel taught metallurgy and cosmetics. Now here is where it connects to the Bible you probably grew up with. Leviticus chapter 16 verses 8 through 10 prescribes the ritual for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. The high priest takes 2 goats. He casts lots over them. One goat is designated for the Lord. The other is designated for Azazel. The goat for Azazel receives the sins of the entire nation of Israel, symbolically transferred onto its head by the priest's hands, and is then sent into the wilderness. This is the origin of the English word scapegoat. The canonical Bible, the one the church kept, names Azazel. The book that explains who Azazel is, what he taught, why he was punished, and where he's buried, that book was removed. The name survived in the ritual. The story behind the name was cut. And nobody in the pews asks who they're sending the goat to, because the text that answered that question hasn't been in their Bible for 1600 years. What comes next is the part that still doesn't make sense. Another angel, listed in a different chapter of 1st Enoch, is credited with something Azazel is also credited with, teaching weapons. But this angel didn't just teach weapons. According to the text, he went to the Garden of Eden and corrupted the first woman, and the Book of Enoch names him directly. Number 6, Gadriel. You're in the Garden of Eden. Not the version from the children's Bible, the one with the friendly animals and the soft lighting, the version from Genesis 3, where something is already going wrong. A woman is standing near a tree she's been told not to touch, and something is talking to her. Genesis calls it a serpent. It speaks. It persuades. It offers knowledge of good and evil, and when she takes it, the entire trajectory of humanity shifts. God expels both humans from the garden. He posts guards at the gate. The story is foundational to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And for 2,000 years, the identity of the serpent has been debated, allegorized, and left deliberately vague. The Book of Enoch does not leave it vague. 1st Enoch chapter 69 verse 6, written centuries before the birth of Christ, names the being directly. The name of the third is Gadriel. This is the one who showed all the deadly blows to the sons of men. He led Eve astray, and showed the weapons of death to the children of men, the shield, the breastplate, and the sword for slaughter, and every weapon of death to the children of men. Two things happen in that passage that the canonical Bible never does. First, the serpent gets a name, Gadriel. Not Satan, a title that doesn't appear in Genesis 3 at all, and wasn't attached to the serpent until centuries later in Christian theology. Not a metaphor. A named being from the angel hierarchy, listed among the chief leaders of the Watchers. Second, the same being who corrupted Eden is also credited with teaching weapons of war, the same general category of knowledge attributed to Azazel in chapter 8. The overlap has generated scholarly debate for more than a century. Some researchers read Gadriel as a parallel tradition, a second account of the same corruption preserved in a different strand of the Enochic material. Others read the two as distinct, Azazel teaching metallurgy and Gadriel teaching combat, the forge and the battlefield as separate crimes committed by separate beings. What hasn't been debated is the implication. If Gadriel is the serpent, then Genesis 3 is not a story about a talking animal or a cosmic test of free will. It's a story about an angelic infiltration of the one place on earth that was supposed to be safe. The garden was sealed, humanity was inside. And a being from the Watcher class, a member of the same group that would later descend en masse on Mount Hermon, entered the garden, targeted the first woman, and opened the door to the corruption that would eventually require a flood to clean up. The Bible gives you the story. The Book of Enoch gives you the name the Bible left out. The name Gadriel has been variously translated. Some scholars break it into Gader, meaning wall or enclosure, and El, meaning God, producing wall of God or enclosure of God. If that translation holds, the irony is almost too precise to be accidental. The angel named God's wall, the boundary, the barrier, is the one who breached the boundary. He was the wall, and he opened. Every other angel on this list brought forbidden knowledge from heaven to earth. Gadriel brought it from inside the garden to outside the garden. He didn't just cross a line, he was the line. This reframes the entire fall narrative. In the Genesis telling, Eve is an agent. She makes a choice. The serpent presents the option, and she takes it. In the Enochic telling, Eve is a target. A supernatural being, far beyond human in knowledge and authority, deliberately corrupted her. The moral weight shifts from human disobedience to angelic assault. And the early church, in the process of assembling the biblical canon, chose the version that puts the blame on the human and excluded the version that names the angel. Whether that was a theological decision, keeping the emphasis on free will and moral accountability, or something else, a deliberate suppression of a tradition that made the heavenly court look compromised, depends on who you ask. What's documented is the outcome. Gadriel's name appears nowhere in the canonical Bible. The serpent remains unnamed. And the Book of Enoch, which names him, sits in the Ethiopian Orthodox canon and nowhere else in Western Christianity. Everything the angels had given humanity, the constellations, the astrology, the solar knowledge, the weapons, even the corruption of Eden itself, all of it was knowledge, in one form or another. But the next angel on this list taught something that cannot be classified as knowledge at all. He taught harm, direct, physical, targeted harm. And the text describes what he taught in language that reads like a clinical manual. Number 7, Kasdeja. You're in a dark room. There are no windows. Someone is speaking in a low voice, and what they're describing is not astronomy, not metallurgy, not the position of stars or the art of forging a blade. What they're describing is how to end a pregnancy, how to summon a demonic strike against another person, how to call a serpent to bite, how to inflict the afflictions of the noonday heat. The language in the Book of Enoch does not dress this up. It does not soften it. It describes a curriculum of harm, taught by an angel, delivered to humans, and recorded on clay in Aramaic more than 2,000 years ago. 1 Enoch chapter 69, verses 12 and 13, names the teacher, Kasdeja, also spelled Kasiade or Kasadia in different manuscript traditions. His name possibly derives from the Aramaic Kasdai, meaning Chaldean or inhabitant of Chaldea, which would link him linguistically to Babylonia, the civilization most associated with sorcery and divination in the ancient Near Eastern world. That linguistic connection isn't accidental. In the ancient Near East, the word Chaldean itself became a synonym for sorcerer. The Greek historian Herodotus used the term that way. So did the Book of Daniel, which groups Chaldeans alongside magicians and astrologers in the court of Nebuchadnezzar. If Kasdeja's name means the Chaldean, then his name is his job description, the same way Kokabil's name meant Star of God. He is the angel of sorcery. He is the fifth mentioned of the 20 Watcher leaders in the Book of Enoch. The text is specific about what he taught. The children of men, all of the wicked strikes of spirits, the strikes of demons, and the strikes of the embryo in the womb, so that it may pass away, and the strikes of the soul, the bites of the serpent, and the strikes which befall through the noontide heat. That phrase, the strikes of the embryo in the womb so that it may pass away, has been read by scholars from R.H. Charles onward, as a reference to induced abortion, a method for terminating pregnancy taught as part of a broader catalog of supernatural and physical harm. Here is what makes Kasdeja's entry different from every other angel on this list. The others taught knowledge that could be used for good or ill. Metallurgy builds plows and swords. Astrology informs agriculture and warfare. Even Gadriel's corruption of Eve can be read as an act of giving knowledge. Forbidden knowledge, but knowledge. Kasdeja taught technique. Specific, targeted, destructive technique. The text describes what he gave humans not as understanding but as capability, the ability to cause harm in ways that were previously outside human reach. The modern discomfort with this passage runs in two directions. Religious readers encounter a 2,300-year-old text that frames abortion as knowledge given by a fallen angel, a framing that maps uncomfortably well onto arguments still happening in legislatures and courtrooms today. Secular readers encounter a text that lumps induced abortion together with demonic strikes and serpent bites, treating a medical procedure as equivalent to sorcery. Neither audience gets what it wants from this passage. The text doesn't moralize. It doesn't explain. It catalogs. Kasdeja taught these things. The text records them. The judgment comes from God's response, which was the same response every angel on this list received: imprisonment, darkness, chains, fire. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe, because the last 3 angels on this list are the ones that change how you read the entire Bible. So here's where things get unsettling in a different way. Every angel on this list so far has taught something that corrupted humanity: weapons, vanity, sorcery, divination, harm. The pattern seems clear. These beings gave humans dangerous capabilities, and God punished them for it. But the next angel breaks the pattern completely. He didn't teach corruption. He didn't teach harm. He didn't give humans a weapon or a spell or a way to damage each other. He taught humans how to defend themselves against supernatural forces, how to break enchantments, how to counter sorcery. He taught protection, and he was punished exactly the same as every other angel on this list. That's the detail that makes the entire framework wobble. Because if the crime was corruption, then teaching defense isn't a crime. But if the crime was something else, if the crime was the transfer itself, the act of giving humans any capability that closed the gap between mortal and divine, then the angel who taught protection was just as guilty as the one who taught weapons. And that changes what this list is actually about. Number 8. Armaros. You're in a village at the edge of the known world, somewhere in the Levant, and something is wrong. The crops are failing in a way that doesn't match the weather. The livestock are dying without visible illness. A child in the settlement hasn't spoken in weeks and stares at a fixed point on the wall from morning to night. The people living here have a word for what's happening. They call it a strike, a spiritual attack. Something unseen is doing this, and they have no way to stop it, because stopping it requires knowledge they don't have. Then, someone teaches them. 1 Enoch chapter 8, verse 3, records it in a single clause. Armaros taught the resolving of enchantments, not the casting of enchantments. Samjaza taught that. Not the summoning of demons or the striking of embryos. Kasdeja taught that. Armaros taught the counter. He taught humans how to break spells, how to undo curses, how to dismantle whatever supernatural machinery had been deployed against them. He gave them the off switch, and he was punished for it. That detail, more than any other entry on this list, changes the entire reading of what the Watcher's crime actually was. If the crime was corruption, if God punished the angels because they gave humans harmful capabilities, then Armaros shouldn't be on this list at all. He taught defense. He taught people how to protect themselves. In any moral framework that defines crime by the harm it causes, teaching someone to break a curse is not the same as teaching someone to cast one. It's the opposite. It's the antidote. And the Book of Enoch treats it as identical to the disease. His name doesn't clarify the paradox. Armaros has been variously translated from the Aramaic. Some scholars break it into a root related to cursed or devoted to destruction, connecting him to the concept of harem, the Hebrew term for something devoted to God through total destruction, the same root that gives Mount Hermon its name. Others read the name as simply mountain, suggesting a geographic link rather than a moral one. Neither translation explains why teaching counter-sorcery carries the same sentence as teaching weapons or inducing abortion. The implication, if you follow it to its logical end, is that the content of the knowledge never mattered. The act of handing it to humans was the entire crime. God did not want humans to have access to any of the supernatural, whether offensive or defensive, whether it meant reading the stars, forging a blade, or predicting an eclipse. The gap between human and divine was supposed to remain open, and any angel who closed it, for any reason, in any direction, committed the same crime. This is where the Book of Enoch starts to read less like a moral tale and more like a power structure. The angels who descended on Hermon didn't just break a rule, they destabilized a hierarchy. They gave subjects the tools of rulers. And the punishment tracked the act of transfer, regardless of the harm done. Armaros, who taught people to protect themselves, sits in the same darkness, in the same chains, for the same 70 generations as Azazel, who taught them to kill. The Prometheus parallel is hard to ignore here, and it's worth pausing on. In Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans. Zeus chained him to a rock and sent an eagle to eat his liver every day for eternity. The punishment wasn't because fire was inherently destructive. Fire cooks food and warms homes as easily as it burns cities. Zeus punished him because the act of giving fire to mortals violated the boundary between divine and human. Fire was divine property. Its transfer was the crime, not its use. The Book of Enoch, written centuries before the Prometheus myth reached its canonical Greek form, tells the same structural story with a different cast. Knowledge is divine property. Its transfer to humans, regardless of whether it heals or harms, is the sin. Armaros is the angel that exposes the machinery behind the whole list. Without him on it, you can read the Watchers as villains who corrupted a pure world. With him, you have to ask whether the world was ever supposed to be pure or whether it was supposed to be ignorant. And that's a question the Book of Enoch never answers. The next angel extends the question. He didn't teach anything about the sky, or the supernatural, or the forge. He taught humans to read the ground beneath their feet, the earth itself, its signs, its patterns, its messages. And his name, when you translate it, means Earth of God. Number 9. Araqiel. You're standing on a hillside in the Fertile Crescent, looking down at a river valley. The soil is dark near the water, lighter as it climbs the slope, and someone beside you is reading it like a page. Not farming it, not surveying it for construction, reading it. The color of the earth in this spot means one thing. The way the ground cracks in dry season means another. The direction of water flow across a clay flat reveals something about what's underneath, and what's underneath determines where certain plants will grow and where certain structures can stand. This person is not guessing. They're interpreting a system, and the system is the planet itself. 1 Enoch chapter 6, verse 7, lists Araqiel as the second of the 20 Watcher leaders. Chapter 8, verse 3, records his teaching in 3 words, the signs of the earth. His name in Aramaic breaks into Arak, a root of Babylonian origin meaning earth or ground, and El, earth of God. Just as Kokabil was star of God and Shamsiel was God is my son, Araqiel's name is his credential. He is the angel of the ground beneath your feet. What signs of the earth means in practical terms has been debated for as long as scholars have been translating the text. The most common reading is geomancy, the art of reading the land, interpreting terrestrial features, soil composition, water patterns, rock formations, earthquake precursors, and natural phenomena as meaningful signals rather than random occurrences. In Mesopotamia and the Levant, that kind of knowledge was the difference between building a city that lasted and building one that crumbled. In the ancient world, this kind of knowledge had military, agricultural, and spiritual applications. Knowing where underground water ran determined where cities could survive. Understanding soil types determined what could be planted and where. Reading geological signals could warn of earthquakes, floods, and volcanic activity in the regions that experienced them. But geomancy in its ancient form was also divination. The reader of earth signs wasn't just predicting practical outcomes, he was reading divine intent embedded in the physical world. The earth, in this framework, was a document, a text written by God into the geology, the seasons, the soil, and the weather, and Araqiel gave humans the literacy to decode it. The same way Kokabil taught the sky as text and Barakiel taught the stars as language, Araqiel taught the earth itself as something that could be read. And the same way every other teacher on this list was punished, Araqiel was imprisoned. What the pattern looks like from above, now, 9 angels into this list, is a systematic handover of the entire physical universe. The Watchers didn't just teach random skills. They gave humans the sky, Kokabil, the ability to read the sky, Barakiel, the sun, Shamsiel, the tools to reshape the material world, Azazel, the secrets of the garden, Gadriel, supernatural offense, Kasdeja, supernatural defense, Armaros, and now the earth itself, Araqiel. Layer by layer, the Watchers were handing humanity the complete operating manual for the world they lived in, every chapter of it, every domain, and every transfer was treated as the same crime, because the issue was never which chapter you opened. The issue was that humans were never supposed to have the book at all. The Watchers gave humanity the heavens and the earth. That phrase, the heavens and the earth, is the first line of Genesis. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And the Book of Enoch says the beings who taught humans to understand what God had created were erased for it. Humans were supposed to live inside the creation without understanding how it worked. The Watchers made it legible. And like every other teacher on this list, Araqiel was imprisoned for it. But there's one angel left, and what he taught wasn't about the sky, or the earth, or the forge, or the garden. The last angel on this list gave humans something more dangerous than any of it. He gave them the ability to record everything the other 9 had taught, to preserve it, transmit it, and pass it across generations without loss. He gave them writing. And the Book of Enoch, which is itself a written text, says that through this teaching, many have gone astray, from eternity to eternity, and to this day, 2,300 years after those words were pressed into clay, and they still read as a live accusation. The last angel on the list is the one holding the pen. Number 10. Penemue. You're sitting at a desk in the ancient Near East. In front of you is a reed, a pot of ink made from carbon soot and water, and a sheet of pressed plant fiber. The surface is blank. The hand holding the reed belongs to someone who, until recently, did not know what to do with any of it. Writing did not exist for this person, not as a concept, not as a possibility. Language was spoken, remembered, passed mouth to ear across generations, and whatever was forgotten was gone. Then someone showed this person how to turn sound into symbol, how to press meaning into a surface, so that it would outlast the speaker, outlast the listener, outlast the generation that produced both. And according to a text written in Aramaic more than 2,300 years ago, that someone was an angel, and the act of teaching it was the most condemned crime on this entire list. 1 Enoch chapter 69 verses 8 through 10 names the teacher, Penemue. His name has been translated variously, but the most common reading connects it to the idea of the inside, or the hidden, a being whose name suggests interiority, the inner workings of things that were not meant to be externalized. The text says he taught the children of men the bitter and the sweet, and he taught them all the secrets of their wisdom. And he instructed mankind in writing with ink and paper, and thereby many sinned, from eternity to eternity, and until this day. Read that last line again, from eternity to eternity, and until this day. No other angel on this list receives that phrase. Azazel was blamed for all sin. Samjaza was bound for 70 generations. Kasdeja taught abortion and demonic strikes, but none of them received a condemnation that the text itself marks as ongoing, still active, still accumulating at the moment the words were being written. Penemue's crime didn't end when he was punished. It continued. It's continuing now. The reason is not hard to find once you see it. Every other angel on this list gave humanity a single category of knowledge: weapons, stars, sorcery, counter-sorcery, the earth. Each of those teachings could, in theory, die with the generation that received it. A technique that is never written down must be retaught by hand, mouth to ear, master to student, and if the chain breaks, the knowledge disappears. Writing broke that constraint permanently. What Penemue gave humans was not another chapter of forbidden knowledge. It was the ability to bind every chapter to a surface and send it forward through time without loss. He didn't teach one secret. He taught humans how to make all secrets permanent. And here is where the text does something that, 2,300 years later, still reads as the most self-aware passage in the entire Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is a written text. It was pressed into clay, copied onto scrolls, translated from Aramaic into Greek into Ge'ez, carried across deserts and oceans and centuries by the very technology it says an angel was imprisoned for giving. The crime of Penemue is the medium of the Book of Enoch. Without writing, the names of the other 9 angels on this list would have been forgotten within a few generations, passed as oral legend, gradually distorted, eventually lost. Writing made the record permanent, and the record says that writing itself was the sin. That's not a contradiction the text ignores. That's a contradiction the text builds into its own architecture. Many sinned from eternity to eternity, and until this day. The phrase "until this day" means the author knew. Whoever wrote those words understood that the act of writing them down was itself a continuation of Penemue's crime. The book that names the angel who gave humanity writing exists because of what that angel gave. The accusation and the evidence are the same object. And then the church erased it. The Council of Laodicea, around 363 CE, excluded the Book of Enoch from the biblical canon. The text that called writing a sin was removed through a written process by literate men, using the very tool the text condemned. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church kept it. Everyone else let it disappear. And for roughly 1,400 years, the only humans on earth who could read the names of the 10 angels who taught humanity what it was never supposed to know were the ones reading in Ge'ez, in a church the Western world wasn't listening to. The real question isn't whether these angels existed. It's why the book that names them was removed from the Bible, and why the only copy that survived was kept by a church nobody in the West was paying attention to. 10 angels descended on a mountain whose name means oath. They gave humanity the sky, the stars, the sun, the forge, the garden, the curse, the counter-curse, the earth, and the written word, and a book that most of the world has never read says they were erased for it. Tell me in the comments which angel taught the thing you find most dangerous and where you're watching from. Subscribe, because there are other books they cut, and this channel is where we read them.